Qualities needed to reconnect with family, Episode 10, Authenticity. Part of the series Conflict Resolution Insights from Lovett's The Compassion Project and FamilyReconcile.com. This is our topic for today.
Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent.
Hello and welcome. I am Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And hi, I'm Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And hello, I'm Brett Lovett, and I am the founder of FamilyReconcile.com.
And here we are. This is the 10th episode from our series regarding reconciliation with the family, which was inspired by the events connecting with the COVID and what we experience through the lockdowns, through the social distancing. And today we are here to have the 10th quality discussed. And our series was designed to have all those 10 qualities. Today we're discussing authenticity. And Brett, if we are to start talking about this topic, please can you give us a definition of what authenticity is to you?
Yeah, and again, with all the qualities that we talk about, there's if you look up online, there's several definitions that are given. One that I like is authenticity is the quality or the state of being real and or genuine.
Thank you. And Brett, when I think about authenticity, I think that it's something that we all should want, right? In fact, I think it's something that we all do want, but I don't think it's something that we all do, because we even have a term for it. Like, man, you're being fake. Like, we know when people aren't being genuine to us. Although I think that we're probably fake to ourselves because we are not genuine to ourselves. And so can you talk a little bit about how this impacts relationships and why this is so important?
That's a good question. Why is it so important? All the qualities that we've talked about, I believe, are important. That's why we've talked about them. And it's no less with this one. I would probably start by saying this. Why is authenticity? Why are we specifically discussing it? Because authentic people are, in today's society, in my opinion, more the exception than they are the norm. So that's the reason for why discussing it, or why just giving attention to it, so that we can, because all these are meant for us to do self-reflection and then apply it as we see fit from there. So it's because it's the exception, not the norm. There's a family therapist. I had read an article on, she's here in the States now, but she grew up in Russia. Her name is Yana Baczynski. And she talked about how in Russia, the culture is that when you ask somebody how they're doing, you get a very direct response. And she said, if I asked somebody how they were doing in Russia, they would never say, "Oh, I'm just fine. How are you?" You would actually get a rundown of what happened that day. I had a very, difficult day, or it was a little bit stressful, and this is what happened at work, and the kids are sick, and you get this rundown. She said, so when she came over here to the United States, she said it was quite a shock for her to see when asked, "How are you doing?" or if she asked how, to get this kind of superficial, quote unquote, fake, to use the word that you said, fake response of, "Oh, I'm just fine. How are you?" And that took her a while to get used to, and she had to process that, because she said she would walk down the street and certain people would smile, and she could tell the smiles were fake. I don't think she said every single one, but she could tell that there was some disingenuousness in how we interacted with one another and how we smiled one another just walking down the street, that was different from what she was used to. And I thought that was interesting. And she went on to build out that point. And when we're disingenuine or we're not authentic, we're actually robbing ourselves. This is a point she made. We're robbing ourselves from connection. And remember how important connection is? We do this series because of connection. We do this series because the are the way we're wired, as you've mentioned, I've mentioned, as we've all mentioned in other programs. That's the reason why we exist. We exist to connect. So if we're, why are we talking about authenticity? We're talking about authenticity because if we're not authentic at some level, if we're not working on it, we could be robbing ourselves of connection. And if we're robbing ourselves of connection, then we're actually fundamentally disrupting the very reason why we exist, which could lead to a whole other host of issues. So it's something we should give some attention to.
But Brett, actually, listening to you, I just had an impression that maybe we are being fake because we don't want to lose connection. We don't want to be authentic because we know what is bad in us. Maybe if we present ourselves in a better light, maybe if we do something which is not authentic but more welcome, we will be more likable. We will gain more connections. What would you say about that?
And before you answer, Brett, just to add one more layer to that same exact question she just asked about how we are being fake in order to build connection. The example that's in my head is politics within families, because we're talking about families, right? And when I can imagine when our political climate brings out an issue that is controversial between people who love each other, a family member might hold back and actually not ever genuinely express their ideas, their beliefs, or positions out of fear that is going to actually drive people that they love away. So, because right, so I was just on point with Natalia as well when you were discussing this. Is what stuck in my head as well. It's like, well, maybe people see it as a benefit to be fake.
Yeah, great question. Well, and well stated, well illustrated. You're absolutely right. I think it happens just about in every dynamic. What the word that comes to my mind is we tolerate, right? So you may, in the example that you gave, you may have an opinion. You may have something you want to express. You don't do it out of fear that it may be misinterpreted, right? Or out of fear that you may make somebody, you may hurt their feelings. You may do something that they don't like or that they don't approve of in a way of thinking, so to speak. And so what you do is you hold back. When you hold back, you're affecting your authenticity, because what that's saying is, see, what you're proving to yourself when you kind of step out and look at it is you're proving that this is a one-sided relationship. If you can't speak so as to be heard out of fear of, some sort of, discomfort or dislike, then that directly affects your ability to be authentic. And what I think is, as I'm thinking about this, a person that's in that kind of scenario then falls into a toleration. So they tolerate this one-sided kind of relationship because of all these other fears, and so they're not being authentic. But here's what that leads to, and the research shows us that can lead to depression. If you're not able to be yourself, you're hurting yourself, maybe not in that moment, but you're hurting yourself down the road. And if you're in a relationship that goes for many years like that, and you're not being true to yourself, and you're being inauthentic in order to do what you think is a good thing, you actually could be creating, you could actually be driving yourself towards depression. People that are in that place for many years, or going down that road for many years, at some point will find a way out. They'll look for a way out. So I know what may appear to be the right way to handle something in the moment, down the road could actually be the cause for for the for relationship failure.
So, is it also that our times produce more of inauthenticity? We're just bombed all around from the internet with fake images, with people using Photoshop to create an idealistic image of themselves. We look at celebrities that create their images that are sometimes, on many occasions, far distant from who they really are. We see our friends, neighbors that do the same, know that authentically they are different to whom they pretend to be. Is it the disease of our times?
Oh boy, that's some people might hear that and say, "Oh, that's such strong wording," and it's actually right on point. A disease of our times. And the society kind of puts this pressure onto us, and I keep saying it's always trying to squeeze us into its mold. In the mold that society is trying to squeeze us into isn't one of being more authentic, right? More genuine, more true. It's more imagery, as you mentioned. We're putting these images out, literal images, right? Physical images, but we're also projecting images. Just look at the nightly news, read the newspaper, look at what's going on in the world. How much of that is because people are being authentic and genuine, as opposed to projecting, something. So society itself absolutely is diseased with this. So why are we discussing the quality? We're discussing the quality because I don't know if we can change the world. I hope we can. It starts with one person at a time. But if we can look at how we're being, can we be more authentic? That's all I'm asking. I'm just saying, can we be more authentic? If we can, then how is that going to affect our family? How's that going to affect people in the workplace? How's that going to affect our relationship with our neighbor? If we're being more authentic and we can try and help them be more authentic, but just by how we're conducting ourselves, that's really what we're trying to do here. So yes, to answer your question, that's exactly what it is. It's a disease of our times. And I had another point, and I was going to say it and I forgot what it was. Just to borrow from another, our purpose in, there could be power structure involved. I'll give you an example. I know of, a daughter that withheld telling her mother something because she was afraid that her mother would get angry or not agree with her with what she wanted to say, and that would affect the relationship. So she withheld from telling her something. So that is something that's a dynamic that exists in many families. There's a power structure, right? There could be power imbalance that causes people to be inauthentic. That happens not just the family. That's obviously in the workplace. You can see that anywhere in society. All I'm saying, you guys, is that there's all these elements working against us to be authentic. If we're mindful of it, maybe we can work against those pressures in ourselves, help ourselves to be a little bit more authentic. Because when we're like that, we get deeper connections, and connection is what this is all about. So if you want deeper, it depends on what you want. If you want deeper connections in your relationships, we need to work on being more authentic, whether the other parties know this or not.
Thank you. And I know you're the guru here today, but might I suggest maybe what I think, anyway, is a solution for the struggle against, needing to be authentic, while what wars against us is a world that is just asking for fake imagery. And you tell me what you think, both of you. It's conversation, right? The need to talk more, the need to be more open, and learning how to conversate correctly, because sometimes people don't know how to talk, right? It's sometimes it might be in a relationship where the guy closes down, he doesn't talk. All right, women accuse men of that all the time. Or maybe it's parent child, and the child doesn't know how to express their feelings to their parent, or the parent doesn't know how to reach and communicate to that younger generation in a way that maybe a school counselor or teacher might. But the parent is aloof, seems aloof anyway, because there's a separation between the cultures. But, or let's take it not just interfamily or interrelationship, but bring it to a national level, for example, whenever I'm seeing these January 6th, discussions that are happening in Congress, where it seems like one side is trying to quote unquote investigate the other side and um, mete out punishment. What I feel that is missing is any kind of real attempt to have reconciliation and discussion and talk and conversate as to why that group of people feels that way. I'm not saying that you need to go sit down and talk to, I don't know, the Nazis, but there's humans being humans and humans doing evil things and bad things. There's a need to talk. There's a need to open dialogue because dialogue can let people then bring out that authenticity. So, is that a solution to the authenticity problem? It's talking, conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. Really well said. I mean, tell me other ways that you can project authenticity other than communication. I mean, you can communicate in ways other than words, right? But that's a major factor. I love that you use the term dialogue. I mean, that's a term that you hear a lot, and most people just think of dialogue as talking. But dialogue, there's some significant research in some philosophers that have talked about that dialogue actually can change the world. And you kind of talked about it in that you kind of briefly skimmed right over the top of it. Dialogue is not about sitting down and directing statements at somebody, which some people take as communication, and that's how they communicate. They direct statements back, and then they go back and forth. Dialogue is just a discussion. It's a conversation. It's an exploring. This is how I feel. This is how I see it. And then the other parties involved say, well, this is how I feel, and this is how I see it. Okay, what happens, and that sounds all like, well, that's what we do, right? Well, no. What happens generally is when a dialogue is opened and the first kind of this is how I feel and this is how then these lines start getting drawn and we start kind of actually backing up, right? Because we have our point and we're going to bring things to support that. That's how a lot of people communicate. So they start here and then they move apart. Whereas dialogue, real dialogue and at a scientific level is really about starting here, all right, or maybe even starting out here and then coming closer. So it's a lack of agenda and judgment and all of that. It's a getting to know. But how are you going to do that if you're not cognizant of that? How are you going to do that if you're not aware of that? I mean, there are probably individuals, I'm assuming there are individuals in the capacity of ambassador for governments that probably don't even understand what dialogue's about. And I'm not saying everyone, I'm just saying there's probably some that don't really understand. If all these nations that are in upheaval with one another could actually sit together, as you mentioned, and discuss something and be open to hearing without having to back up their points, you actually would probably have quite a bit of resolution come out of that, more than a direct attempt at resolution, like peace treaties and whatnot. Why don't those hold? They don't hold because they're directive and in their statements. They're not really a getting to know. So authenticity really, really weaves in and out of what you said, Mac. It really weaves in and out of dialogue and openness, but also reserving or not trying to back up your points. Just being open, saying your points, but being open to what's there.
And what if we have a situation where people think about themselves that whenever they are authentic, they might be unattractive. That being authentic makes them weak, poor, make them not really get to the level they would want to be. They pretend to be someone else to cover for their failures, to cover for their shortages. And what if people think that they're unsustainable simply, and they are not authentic because they fear rejection? What would you advise people who have fears of that kind?
Good question. It made me think of the individual I mentioned earlier, the family therapist, Baczynski. She says, when you see people that are happy all the time, that doesn't mean that they're happy. She says, actually, people who are happy or project being happy all the time are actually signaling inauthenticity and fear of vulnerability. It's one thing, she said, we all have days where we need to wear a mask, on that particular day to get through that day for whatever reason. But when you're consistently wearing a mask, you're consistently projecting something else, you're signaling inauthenticity and fear of vulnerability. And, we talked about vulnerability in another program. So just to, because they're similar qualities. So let's highlight them. So authenticity is being real or genuine, true to oneself, and vulnerability is being open or not guarded. So when we're projecting something all the time, that's actually a signal. If you see that in somebody else, that's a signal that they're probably afraid of being open. And so they're guarded. And so therefore they probably struggle with being authentic. Maybe they were hurt before when they tried to be authentic, or maybe they're just giving into that pressure we're talking about that comes from society saying, here's all the, the sparkling images, right? And the glitz and the glamour, and that's real life. That's not real. That's not real. So we gotta use a little bit of our, intellect to understand that all this stuff being thrown at us is not, just because it's there doesn't mean it's authentic. If anything, it's really disingenuous.
And thank you for that. And tell me, since we are heading to the end of our 10 episode series, I was thinking, and what if it is not authentic? I am not authentic when I am showing, when I am apologizing. So it is not authentic to me. It's not the real me when I am doing that. How do we reconcile being authentic with all those things that are so difficult? Being vulnerable might not be authentic me. Being apologizing might not be authentic me. Forgiving might be not the authentic me. How do we do that?
Wow, I don't even know how I can answer that, because it's really, we're discussing these qualities, and you talked about forgiving and apologizing and authenticity, which are all the qualities we're discussing. It's hard for me, and actually it's impossible for anybody to say, well, this is how this is exactly what you need to do, in this is how you do it, because for each one of us, we have to look at our relationships. So my relationships are not the same as your relationships, Natalia, and your relationships, Natalia, are not the same as Mac's relationships. So we have to first start. This is what we do. If we want to work towards being more authentic, we need to take a self-inventory of who we are. What matters to me? What matters to me? What are my morals? What are my principles? What do I stand for? We have to know that first, because that's your true self. Okay. Once we know that, then when we're in a conversation, when we're talking with somebody that we're in a relationship with, regardless if it's in the workplace or in the family or with our neighbor, once we know our true self, well, then we can speak to that. We can speak to who we are, and be vulnerable and be open to expressing an opinion, even if we think that opinion might not be met favorably. What we have to do is we have to be open to what comes back to us. Okay. We have to be open. This goes back to our dialogue thing. You're not trying to make a point and then support the point. So we got to separate legalities here, because as lawyers and mediators, and okay, we can get caught up in that. Dialogue's different than making a case. Hopefully that's understood. Dialogue is different than making a case. We're talking about dialogue. So why is dialogue so important? Because that's our way to connect. If we're saying something and then being open to what comes back, then we're connecting on a deeper level. We're showing us who we are, and we're allowing somebody else to be who they are without fear of us saying, no, you're not right, or I'm Republican and you're Democrat and we've got it right and you've got it wrong, or we avoid all of that because we're just having a dialogue. So authenticity is about just being open to communicating on a deeper level, and it starts with taking an inventory of ourselves and who we are, and then you've got to show courage. It takes courage to show other people who you are without being afraid of what's going to come back. So that's where it starts. That's what this is about. I mean, we can talk for hours on authenticity, but what we're saying here is, how do I become more authentic today? Take an inventory of who you are, what you stand for, what you're about, and don't be afraid to share that with others, but also don't be afraid to hear what others have to say if it's different than you. Now you're having dialogue. Now you're building a deeper connection.
So it's been said that we are the divided states of America
Hmm.
because there's so much brokenness and between people, and there's a lot of mistrust. Sometimes there's an exception, perhaps, a 9/11 or some major event might bring us all together.
Hmm.
We bring our families together, or there might be a special day, maybe Christmas, where people will call up, a loved one who they might be estranged from and try to connect back. But those are exceptions again. For the most part, we all have a lot of work to do, and this 10-part series has been a lesson on that, right? Of all the things that we need to try to do to connect with family. And whether that's, again, parent child, spouse, brother sister, any kind of relationship that we value that's important to us, the last uh in a way 10 weeks, plus, has been um uh, our attempt anyway at intermediations and with you, Brett, to discuss this and try to give people the solution that they need. So this show is a special one because it's a wrap up, and we're looking forward to next week having a live session with you where we're going to recap all of them and have a deeper talk, and hopefully people will tune in, and that'll be live. So to end, just reminding people of where we've come from. We've discussed the quality of deference, apologizing, forgiveness, vulnerability, sincerity, humility, kindness, gratitude, integrity, and today, authenticity. And in many ways, I think that this last one of authenticity is a good uh, capsule because of the fact that there's actual danger in people not being authentic. For example, we all know about body dysmorphia, right? The body dysmorphia is when a person uh, is never satisfied with the true image of themselves, and they need to go under the knife, surgery after surgery after surgery, because they're never completely genuinely happy with the way they look. Okay, we all need to help work against that, against the things that push us towards in authenticity and disingenuousness. We all need to just become whole and healthy. So that's basically it. And we are signing off. Thank you so much, Natalia. Thank you so much, Brett, for the talks that we've had over the last number of months. And it's been a great opportunity to work with you guys on this. And we're going to keep it going next week. And hopefully people will, come and check it out. All right.
Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate the both of you and what we're doing here. You mentioned earlier, you said, I'm the guru, and I know that you mean well by that, but I really don't want to be that. Somebody once told me better to be the guide on the side than the sage on the stage. And that's really what I want to be. It's just a facilitator of the information. And then we put it out there, the three of us, and then we let people apply it however they want to apply it. But think of the good that we've done just with these 10 qualities. Just by, I know I'm certain days trying to be a little bit better because I'm talking about these things, right? So I'm trying to apply these things in the, to me first. And hopefully we can share this with others, and it makes an impact on them as well, in a good way, in an authentic way.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I've actually gotten feedback, from people who have told me that they are watching. So people are listening and they are considering what we've been saying. And hopefully that will make their relationships better and stronger. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Bye bye for now.
Bye.